So now it's working. Fine. Yeah, welcome to my session here for you maybe in the morning, for me in the evening. Yeah, what I wanted to present you is, just put it in the presentation mode, is the status about the service mesh implementation in ONAP on London release. So as you have heard already from Byung, this is aligned with what also the okay, this was from the old part, what was aligned with the architecture subcommittee and so on. And we have, or I have presented, let's say, the ongoing process already in the cone release, where we started as a POC and now finally decided to implement and make use of the service mesh as the standard deployment method, or the standard production deployment method in the London release. So here, as a recap again from what also Byung was showing, what is about. So we will have, let's say, in the ONAP cluster, an enabled the service mesh platform, and at the moment it is Istio running. We have this service mesh implementation does a sidecar instantiation in each of the component pods, and enables the MTLS encryption between components and towards the outer side. It is maintained or managed by Istio, the Istio operations part, and or controlled by that, and that's let's say the core part of the of the Istio framework. For the external communication, we are using nowadays then an ingress controller to communicate through from the outside, and we have then, or we are planning then to, or we are ongoing to make an integration towards the IDAM, which is in our case Keycloak, which we are using as well an OAuth proxy in between the ingress controller, ingress gateway, and the Keycloak for authentication and authorization. So we had defined in that time, as a recap, 4 steps basically. The first step is we needed to enable the components to work with service mesh. We disable AAF and nowadays remove, and that's coming to the next slides. Removing AAF because the components will not implement, or do not need to implement, any encryption on their interfaces, as I told you, the sidecars are doing the encryption for you. So AAF is not needed to receive certificates and so on, and enable the TLS on the component level or on the pod level. But this is then replaced, as I said, by the Istio framework, or the service mesh. That means all the components will enable their interfaces, and I'm coming to that later a little bit, and talk through the proxy sidecars then to the outer world. The next thing is the authorization, which is also planned in here in London, so that we have service accounts. This is already in place, and we are planning also to have authorization policy for the intercomponent communication, so that you can assign then a policy who can connect to whom on the component level. The third part, which is also planned, as also Byung said, is the external access through the ingress controller is intercepted by the OAuth proxy and is, let's say, redirecting you to the Keycloak for authentication, and then depending on your role, you are, let's say, able then to access then the internal services. The fourth one, using basically or enabling or configuring on each component level in the chain this kind of authorization. This is not planned for London. This is then for a further step to be told or to be done. So as I said, certificates is basically done. Components should run. We have some open fixes for open issues for some components, which are, let's say, which we have already assigned, and come to that later. We have tickets for that. There are some, or we will even find, of course, some components which might not work correctly, and we will then test this and make then bug reports or something like that, or changing then the things if it can be done on OOM level, so on the Helm chart level. If it's needed, if it needs to be an implementation change, then we will contact the component owners to make the fixes. Yeah. For some, we already detected that there are changes needed, like, for example, CLI needs some implementation change, most likely the A1 policy management, the CDS UI needs something, and the OOF, for example. Yeah, and most likely also the Open API Manager. Then we have another topic, as I said, so the service-to-service authorization here. Bjorn and the Ericsson team were volunteering to do that. Oh, sorry. Then the external authentication. I'm working currently on that to enable the connection via the OAuth 2 proxy to Keycloak and so on. Then the authorization, for example, done for the access, the external access, and I'm already having that implemented, but it's not officially now deployed, as the Portal NG is still on the implementation phase, but I have it on a test basis already here, and then also for other services that this is then implemented to do that. The full RBAC, as said, is not implemented in London. So the requirements we have set basically on, or I proposed, and which were accepted, were on the first part, the AAF will be removed because it, as I explained, it has no, it does not make sense to have this component anymore. We will have then no dependency anymore to AAF, which also, let's say, makes the makes the components more independent from each other, and more, hopefully then also more stable, because as I know from our own experience, AAF was always a problematic component in respect to stability at the end, because there were some constraints which are, of course. So this is removed basically. The other requirement is that, as I showed, the external communication has to go via Ingress. So any external secure communication is done via the Ingress component. No node ports should be or can be used. Only the Ingress communication is allowed to do towards the ONAP services. Then the third one, which is and it was already an existing requirement in former cases, but were not always implemented. All components must be able to run without MSB, because MSB is the microservice bus, is basically something which is doing also a kind of interface towards the outer world. Yeah, so providing a single point of contact to the services. And this is, let's say, not required when we use Ingress gateway for that, and therefore all the components. So it has to be possible to let's say, drop a MSB from the deployment without that the components were not working anymore. And we have at the moment some components which are still not in the still let's say requiring MSB for their functionality, like in SO and I guess also in VFC. So just what is done up to cone release, as I explained. So the pods had requests or got implemented an HTTP, for example, interface through a service, and they are fetching their TLS configuration from AAF, as I said, and providing to the outer world their service via a host, via the node port, so that the nodes could be, or the services could be accessed via a host IP and the node port, basically. Yeah. So this is how it is done, or was done since or until Cone. In the London release, we decided basically to support two kind of deployment flavors. Yeah. So the one is the simple one, which we called now development deployment. Yeah. So that means if you don't want to have, let's say, a gateway, an ingress gateway, just deploy it without Istio and so on, you would have a kind of a development deployment, which is the same way as it is done in the former releases, providing a node port access through to the pod, but only, of course, supporting HTTP, as we don't have any AAF anymore, so you cannot implement any secure interface. If you don't do it, I mean, that's the standard way. Of course, you would be able to use Cert Manager or something like that to do that, but from the standard deployment we're doing in OOM, this would be then one possibility to deploy the ONAP. But it is, as of course clear, it is unsecure, and it is of course not something which you would need to or would do in a production environment. Yeah, and the access would be the same as before, just using, of course, HTTP. Yeah. The third one, and this is then this kind of production setup which we are implementing, is the one which we are at the moment testing, and is the default setup which we are trying to push now and test in our gatings and in our dailies. So is the one using Istio. So the Istio control plane will automatically deploy the proxy, so the envoy proxy to the pods. Still, the service is defined as an HTTP service, but it is an encrypted communication between the components using MTLS. Yeah, through the envoy proxy, so which is then handling then which has a certificate and will do the encryption, basically. The ingress gateway, as said, for external access, will provide an HTTP access from outside. The HTTP, so the TLS certificate will be at the moment, let's say, deployed by the ONAP platform, so a kind of default self-signed certificate at the moment. So this is so not an officially signed. So you will have then see that, of course, this is not officially signed. So this is at the moment in the deployment done by the OOM cert service, which is using the Cert Manager basically for creating the certificate for the ingress gateway. You communicate not via a host IP, but you have a service URL. It means, in our case, how it is defined in the ONAP component. Yeah, so you usually have in the Helm chart a definition of your address, basically, or your host IP, host name, and this will be then let's say concatenated with another entry in the global section in the Helm chart, which is defining then basically URL, the domain URL, like we have it here, showing that would be the service URL for HTTP for the SDCF front end. So like SDC front end UI at .simpledemo.onap.org. So as we keep it with the old, let's say, URL basically, and the routing is done in the Ingress gateway to route that access point basically, or this URL, to the right service in the Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, so that means as so when you just define that Ingress configuration, automatically resources here in that way, it is a gateway, and then so an Istio gateway and virtual service resource is configured in the Ingress gateway to connect then this URL to the right service inside the cluster. The next thing is, as already mentioned, we have then the Keycloak deployed. We have an ONAP, let's say, basic realm, which is also in the from the ONAP platform component deployed or instantiated in the Keycloak component. And we will have, and this is where I'm working currently to that, use the OAuth proxy whenever you have an access. You will be, and this can be, of course, configured depending on the interface towards through the OAuth proxy, and you might be redirected then to Keycloak to log in, for example, and then the OAuth token will be set, and you can then access then the service. So that's the production deployment. And what we have at the moment, we have already the production deployment running in the daily tests, so in the daily deployments. So we have it in ONAP daily DT, of course, because we are doing it at the moment in the DT labs, ONAP service mesh master. So this is the, let's say, deployment tests, to the production deployment and the results of the production deployment tests. The development case, let's say, or setup is also tested in a daily, and this is the old, let's say, DT OOM master, so without the SM. So this is, let's say, the installation without a service mesh, and this is the installation with service mesh. The gating tests are already changed to a setup without AAF, yeah. But they are at the moment running on this kind of development setup. So we need to, or we will change the gatings as well to this production setup. So including basically Istio and the service mesh. Most likely we'll do that next week. And what of course needs to be done is still test cases have to be fixed so that we are green again, because also test cases were depending on HTTPS implementations of the services and not, let's say, the HTTP, especially the 5G bulk PM. And we have, of course, a couple of components which need still to be fixed. UUI, I think I'm ready with that. I will check that. But the others, we need then the support of the teams most likely, and of course the OOM team as well. Right. Showing that to you, you see what is one benefit of that whole implementation is, so this is, let's say, is of course that we have a Kiali, so we can visualize all the communication between the components. So you can see, and this might be also relevant then for the architecture team, so you can basically visualize graphically the communication, and you see what is encrypted, what is not encryption. At the moment, we don't have the logging in the details because then we would need to implement Jaeger. But this is, let's say, how the communication is looking like, let's say, in the last days, whatever is, you can see really then by component, so who is connected to what, of course, as long as there is a communication, it can detect. You see that quite nicely how the let's say communication is looking like and so on. And of course, we will still find problems, so that some might not work correctly, and might or maybe then we need them to do some fixes. And as I said, so we have external access via the ingress, so you can access, as I've shown you, via HTTPS the for example Sparky PE from outside, without at the moment any login and whatever, but this is how it is. Also SDC, of course, I don't have the so these are again the implementations at the moment. And what I can also, so you can see here in detail, of course, the components. This is the ONAP daily service mesh. You can see in each component you have the sidecar applied to that, where you can really see the ECU proxy, and you can really see who is connected to it, and you can also see which components are not working, right? So and that's the reason why we have at the moment, as I said, we have the daily tests, and you can see in the service mesh test, for example, I put on that because the other one has problems. You see that there are, of course, because not all the pods are running, yeah. So because of the components which are missing, that some of the tests have failed, definitely. Hopefully we get that to up to 100% again. I have worked on the HVS at the moment, and you see also in this test, okay, these are the components where even the health check is failing, but this is clear because they have not been changed so far. UUI, as I said, is ongoing. I have a patch for that. Also, the smoke use cases are mostly working. Basic CNF will be removed, but all the other ones which are actually using the external interface or the ingress interfaces are basically working. 5G bike PM is, as I said, one issue we have to fix. And of course, security test cases that either make no sense or will be then also green when we look at that in more detail. Yeah. But the target for us in ONAP, in integration, and the OEM team is, of course, to get everything back to 100%, so that basically all tests, as we have done it already beforehand, are working with the service mesh deployment as before. And as a teaser, for example, we have, this is basically the portal NG access. So it is portal NG, and this is in our lab here with another kind of URL, which is not the simple demo ONAP org, but that's a valid one. You will be, as you see, redirected in that way when you log in to Keycloak. You are signing in, and okay, I had a timeout, of course, here. You will then be on this would be then, let's say, the first glimpse look to the ONAP portal NG, and you would have then some kind of app starter as you know it from the old portal, but this is just a beginning and it's not ready yet. Yeah, so it's just implemented here, and you see you have users, you have different roles here. So ONAP designer role, this is coming with the realm basically. You have different roles, and you have them per default some already assigned users, and you can even here create new users, change the users, and so on, and assign roles here. So this is already part of the ONAP portal NG deployment. All right, now it is exactly 7 o'clock. Much of talking, Do you have any questions or remarks?
Andres is fantastic. Really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's still a lot to do, but I think we're on the right track now. So I was happy that we decided now last week to make the step forward and removed actually the AAF from the deployment because that makes it much more easy to now work more concentrated on still the ongoing fixes and so on. So yep.
This is really good. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Andres, there's a question from Odessa about the attribute-based access or rollback-based access.
Yeah.
It's in chat.
Yeah, I see. I don't know.
Yeah,
sorry, Odessa.
Yeah.
I don't.
To me, let me give you some. For now, the Andres doing the code screen role-based access control based on role. I think that after using full role-based, maybe we can think about attribute-based, because sometimes role is not enough. Admin can be. We need additional attribute to determine final access control, because the admin can work from home and they have a different the privilege than work from inside the company. So I think that we're gonna tackle access-based access control after London. That's we're gonna discuss with Andres and in the architecture subcommittee. That's the plan, and SACOM too. Okay.
All right. Then thanks a lot. If there's no more comment, and for all of you, nice day, evening, night, and whatever, and
Sure.
see you in
Thank
the
you.
next place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you, Andreas.
Andreas, thank you very much. See everybody tomorrow.
Mhm.